Good evening and welcome to the December 10th, 2018 work session of the Mayor and Council. Tonight we have four discussion topics. If I can invite Andy Rosati and Ken Weiss to the table. Our first discussion topic tonight is our annual briefing from the Multicultural Affairs Committee. My mistake. I should have had you guys come up there before the meeting. I knew you guys were coming up first.
Sure.
Great. Good evening, Mayor Ashman and City Council members. This evening I have Ken Weiss with us. He is actually filling in for Jose Contreras, who was scheduled as our chairperson of the committee, but he was unable to make it this evening due to an injury, so Ken has kindly offered to assist us.
We wish Jose the best in his recovery.
Thank you. Okay.
Ready?
Okay, Ken.
So I'm the default presenter. It's like tennis. If you have a default, it's not always good.
We'll grade you afterwards.
And I'm very pleased to be here. I'm very comfortable in this chair, which I have enjoyed before. The Multicultural Affairs Committee, as you know, is to enrich our city through the promotion of understanding and respect and appreciation of the many cultures of the great city of Gaithersburg. We have 5 members right now. We've lost a couple and we're open to more. We would love to have more people join the committee. However, in our small group of 5, we do have a Latin American and a person from the Middle East and one from Africa and one from Asia and an overall pinch hitter, to change the sports analogy.
Is there a maximum number on your committee? How many openings do you have?
We have 15 is max.
Oh, okay.
Oh yeah, you got lots of
We'll
room.
go out recruiting then.
So we could triple in size. Okay, the committee the committee recognizes different cultures, through proclamations read at mayor and council meetings. That we've had during the year the African American History Month, and Arab American, Asian Pacific American, Hispanic American, and the very important and powwow to celebrate the Native American and Alaska Heritage Month, which we will talk about in a few minutes. The Diverse City Showcase is a major event that we've had in beautiful Lake Forest Mall for the last 2 years. It celebrates the many cultures of Gaithersburg, and it's an opportunity to educate people from the community who attend about some of the cultures in Gaithersburg, and to help them understand that we are really one of the most diverse cities in the nation and maybe in the world. So the event is, as we said, celebrated with Lake Forest Mall, and we've got dance groups from different countries. In this case, Africa, and it looks like Ireland on the far right. You could tell Irish by the way by the dancing pose. It's always a beautiful pose. I'm having trouble looking at the screen and reading this at the same time. So
They're just pictures from the Diversity Showcase.
Yeah, well, I can see the pictures, but and some groups. We asked the presenters to tell something educational about their countries, to include a little educational component in their presentations, and that worked out very well. And then some of them also included dancing lessons, which was a big hit with not just the young people, surprisingly, but old people too. And then we had 2 stations for calligraphy and henna, and I don't know if any of you took a look at the lines of people, but the line of waiting for calligraphy most of the day went almost back to Starbucks. It turned out to be a very popular part of the event. And then we had one table with a cultural presentation giving info in which Samira Hussein could give information about her culture. Then the library participated. They had an activity to give attendees, or to let attendees showcase their countries of origin. And the kids got, it helped the kids get excited about the African dances and the dance moves, the new dance moves that they were learning. Okay. Then Discover Books donated 500 books to the event, and they had a spinning wheel that was pretty evident. Kids could spin, and the wheel landed on a country, and if the kid could answer a question about the country, then he or she got a free book. So more than 300 books were given away that way. And anything to, as our mayor knows, anything to put books in people's hands is a very good thing to do. Then the social powwow, which was only about a month ago. This is the, I think, 4th or 5th time we've done it. It's always a big event. It's in cooperation with the Indian Health Service, which actually does we could say the technical part of the event, and we do part of the administration and the organization. It was held November 3rd in the Activity Center to celebrate American Indian and Alaska Native Heritage Month. And it is a partnership between our committee and the Indian Health Service. And our Mayor, Judd Ashman, attended the event and presented a proclamation, which was well received, and he's flanked by members of the committee on one side and one of the leaders of the event on the other side. Then, I think for the first time this year, if I'm not mistaken, we brought a storyteller, Native American stories, and I think everybody enjoyed that, the kids and the adults, and you can see in the lower right he was a very, very animated person. He brought audience members onto the stage to act out parts of the story, and he made it very, very interactive. So that worked out well. Then there were vendors who sold a variety of native products, jewelry, clothes, instruments, soaps, blankets, and food, including the famous fry bread, which some people like much better than other people like it, to be delicate. Arts and crafts, our committee incorporated some new crafts into the powwow. Making totem poles and making bracelets were really popular the whole day. Kids were lined up to participate in these. The interactive games were a big hit for kids as well. They included a musical mat game and crab racing, which was a lot of fun, and a cakewalk. Then we had the drummers, powwow drumming. If people who had hearing aids did not need them during the drumming session, they could be turned off. We had actually a second drum group at the event, which added a variety of music and put a greater component of drumming into the powwow. Then the hoop dance, if you didn't see that, you missed something. It was amazing. The performer started with one hoop, and she kept putting on more and more until she got something like 10, more or less. She never dropped one during the performance, which was amazing. It was fun to watch. And then participation in city events. Of course, Multicultural Affairs Committee helps organize art exhibits at Boer Park, the Harmonious Art Group and the Latino Art League, both exhibits, and then we organize small receptions to start the exhibits and sort of kick them off. The Labor Day Parade, we helped to judge the parade, always a big event. And then, of course, we participate in the Mille de Mayo, which is, we had a table where the kids could make maracas, and I said maracos, that's all. The kids could make maracas. And the Mille de Mayo is just, it's still a fairly new event, but it's become, I think, very nice and very important, so we're happy to participate in it. Then, advisory roles. We are very proud to have been asked by at least a couple of committees to give them ideas about how they can diversify the membership in their committees and also diversify their activities, so they appeal to wider group of people. And it's really, I would say, an honor for us to be asked to do that. Committee members have provided suggestions and ideas on how to go about contacting cultural group leaders through churches and markets and in other ways to try to help the other committees to diversify. Looking forward, goals and vision, like any good organization, we attempt to replicate what has worked in the past, and we attempt to be open to new ideas so that we can implement new programs and activities in the future. We have plans to improve the 2019 Diversity City Showcase with cultural storytelling and with more dance and with more music. We want to continue the free book giveaway supported by Discover Books because this enhances our city's goal of becoming a book-loving city. So essentially, what worked right, we'll do it again, and whatever we can add that contributes to our mission, we will certainly do it. And we're open to questions.
Thank you very much, Ken, Andy, and we thank all the members of the committee. I got a tweet from Jose at the beginning saying he's sorry he can't be here. He thanks us for our well wishes, and he's watching from home, so we better do this right, okay? I know the council and I go to virtually all of the events that are put on, and of course we're here for any of the proclamations that happen. We appreciate the passion and the thoughtfulness with which you guys put on programming. It does add a lot to our community. It does celebrate many of the cultures. Of course, we'd be doing this every single day if we wanted to celebrate every single culture in the city of Gaithersburg because we're so diverse. But I think we get a broad swath of the different cultures that are in this community represented and celebrated, and we appreciate it very much. Forgive me, Rob, are you the liaison? Who's the liaison?
I am the liaison.
Okay. That you said that with a little guilt.
Just a little bit.
We're gonna give Rob.
I was excited last week.
We're gonna give Rob a chance to comment or ask questions first, and then we'll go around the table.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not sure I deserve that honor, and I apologize. I should be coming to more of the meetings. It does conflict with the Police Advisory Committee meeting, and then I've just run out of time these days with the Army stuff.
Don't worry. Just ask your questions.
No, but I feel really bad because one, it's a great meeting. It's a great committee, and they're great meetings, and there's always great food at the meetings as well. There's the tea and the cookies, and so if I could show up, and I'll try to make an effort. I'd ask you, Andy, if you could just send me the emails to remind me, and I know I should be mature enough
that
to
offline. Just
okay. So that's my public mea culpa to the committee, and Jose's going to probably give me something for that.
Already?
One thing that you didn't mention, which I thought was a really great activity that started this year, was the Day of the Dead altar that was at the Activity Center. It was there during voting. And so I actually received quite a few comments from people who were coming through and saw it and were pleasantly surprised by it. I mean, it was an attraction. It was, in fact, there at one of the best times to have folks come and showcase our multiple cultures here in the city. So that was a great idea. And that was actually one of the meetings I showed up for when we were planning the altar. So, yay. One thing I'd like to see next year, and I'd like to engage you guys on this at a future meeting, and I've been trying to recruit a particular individual to the Multicultural Affairs Committee to effectuate this, because I realize your bandwidth is only yay big, and everything you could do is yay big. June is Pride Month, and that's one of the communities we have here in Gaithersburg that we'd like to engage with. And so I would like to noodle on whether we can have programming in that regard. I know, for example, Rockville has programming, the county has programming. The county just opened the Pride Center down county, or actually it's more mid-county. And you know, it's a segment of our community I think we should do a little bit more to welcome. So I would like to talk about how we can engage on programming in the future. But thank you for the presentation, for all the work you do.
Mm-hmm.
thanks, Rob.
Could I just
Yeah, please,
comment
go ahead,
quickly
Ken.
on the Day of the Dead? I think is the Olde, I think, is a good example of a project that came to us. As you know, two ladies brought it to us one night, and I think we all bought into it pretty fast, and it turned out to be very nice.
Yeah. Mike?
Yeah, so I thought that was a great way to kind of end Hispanic Heritage Month as well, since you know, Dia de los Muertos is where that started from. So the exhibit this year, again, from the Latino Art League of Washington was great too. So it's nice to see that again, and I like our continuing relationship with that. I think you know, you guys do a lot of work for having such a small committee at this point. So it's amazing that you managed to get these things done and pull them off with great success. I think the Diverse City Showcases has become, or is becoming, a really nice event and with meaning for a lot of segments of the community. I think Rob's idea about doing something for Pride Month makes sense. I hope that every group and racial and ethnic group feels welcome in the city. I think they do. Because we don't have an event doesn't mean they're not welcome. But I think it's important to recognize those groups when we can and make sure they know. So we can certainly incorporate some of the acknowledgement and recognition of those groups in any event that whether it's the Book Festival or Summerfest or Oktoberfest or anything else like that. So I like the idea that you're going to be able to start have some interactions with our other committees because I think, you know, a lot of our business owners are people from are immigrants, people from communities and countries outside the U.S. This is their second and adopted country, and I think that they bring a lot to the culture of the city. So the idea that that you might get involved with economic development or Old Town Advisory, et cetera. And then finally, I'll just speak to the La Mia de Mayo that's become, you know, because the date that it's offered is coincides usually with Cinco de Mayo, which is a major American holiday, not necessarily a Mexican holiday, but I think that's a lot of fun. I love finishing the mile run with the mariachis playing, so I want to thank you for that. But I think what you've been able to do, hopefully we'll have one where it doesn't drizzle or rain next year. So, but I'll be there to run again. Let me brag a little bit. I won my age group last year, but I think there were only 3 people in my age group, so anyway. But apparently I was one of the oldest people running too, so. Anyway. Great event, great work. I think I like your vision going forward. I think you would be aided by recruiting some more people to the committee, and it's up to us to help you do that. I think one of the advantages you have is this is the most diverse council in Montgomery County. And I think we could do something about that to help you generate some membership there too. So.
Thanks, Mike. Ryan.
Well, first let me echo all the well-deserved kind words about this committee and the great work that it does. Obviously, we have outstanding staff to support you all, but this is a volunteer-driven effort, undoubtedly, and you do a lot of excellent programming throughout the course of the year that has really grown quite a following. I know, for example, you know, I always attend the powwow with my kids, and they always have the best time, and they bring home all their arts and craft projects and talk for days about, you know, all of the costumes and the cultural presentations and dances and drums that they've gotten to witness. So that's a wonderful event, and I know I was hiding in the back of one of the pictures that you showed from the powwow this year during your presentation. I was there as well, so I'm happy to always support that event. I want to add my voice of support for Rob's suggestion with regard to Pride Month, bearing in mind that this is a volunteer-led committee and that you know, we have limited resources and there's only so much we can do, as the mayor said, and we can't recognize every single you know, cultural group within the city. I think that would be a nice thing to explore and just see what we might be able to do, even if it's not anything huge. I know that this past year we did change the city's logo to the rainbow colors during Pride Month, and there may have been some other symbolic things that we did as well, so I did want to acknowledge that we have done that, bearing in mind again that we do have limited resources and can't can't do events for every single group and every single cause that's out there, even though we recognize that they're all good. I also really enjoyed the Day of the Dead display, and I do think it was fortuitous that it happened to be during early voting, and we got a lot of people to come in and see it, and maybe people who wouldn't know that there are wonderful art displays at the Activity Center all year long. Got a chance to experience that, and so that was really neat, and just goes to show, you know, the work of the committee in organizing and helping to support those kinds of art displays doesn't go unappreciated. It just happens has to happen at a time when we can get enough people out there to know that it's there and appreciate it. And we'll continue to do our part to promote all of the events and the arts displays that are going on around the city. I do just want to say a word. Like maybe it's the lawyer in me. I want to say a word about, let's just be a little bit careful about the line between cultural displays and other types of displays as a city government. I think the Day of the Dead display was outstanding. I'm not sure we as a government should be using the word altar. But that's a discussion that we as a mayor and council can have, and is not, for the committee to worry about. But otherwise, I just want to commend you all. It was my pleasure and honor to serve as a liaison to the committee in the past, and I just salute the great work of the longtime members and some of the newer members of the committee for all you do, and staff for your outstanding work, and keep it up. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Could I break in?
Yes,
again?
please.
Your comment about outstanding staff supporting the committee, absolutely true. Absolutely.
All right, I don't have a lot more to add. That everything's already been said. You folks do great work with a small team, and the events are terrific. In my experience, especially in recent months, I've spoken to a number of people who represent immigrant groups and other folks who you talk about a lot. And clearly we need to do a lot more to build bridges to the different participants in our very diverse city. So aside from showcasing culture, which I know is your charter, I wonder if there's any other ways that we can reach out and build some more bridges into making sure that they understand what services that the city offers and how to participate and become more deeply embedded in the fabric of our city, including your committee, but the others that we have as well. So if you have any thoughts on that, it would be interesting to see what we can do better. Thank you.
Lorianne?
Thank you for the presentation. I too enjoy lots of the events, and I can't remember how old the diversity showcase is. Is it 2 years now?
We've had 2.
2 years now, okay. So I enjoy all of the events. I think the powwow event is fairly new. So I see that there's been some changes with some of the programming. I remember I see that some programs are missing. I think I used to attend one during African American History Month, but I don't know if that's phased out or if we're...
Yeah, a few years ago we combined many of the cultures. We had a lot of small events throughout the year, and we thought we'd have more impact by turning it into one large event. So Diversity Showcase is really, our flagship event where we can incorporate a lot of the cultures of Gaithersburg.
Because I see that there's some other cultures that have individual standalone events, and I just want to make sure that
like the powwow, for example, yeah, that
yes,
and
the art
some of them,
exhibits and
And we do have pretty much every year we do have African American art exhibits up. This year, this February, we'll have another one.
Okay, so at the art exhibit, because I went to the Hispanic American Heritage exhibit, is there a formal program? Because I know that part of the mission of this organization is really to enrich understanding of the culture, or is this just, a reveal and then walk around, or is it an actual program where people are going to walk away with something?
Some of them are. Some of them do have the artists giving talks about their artwork to enlighten people about, some insights into their artwork.
Okay. I would hope that as the committee continues to evolve and as we get more members involved, that we maybe start to think of a way to kind of, I don't know if we want a cookie cutter way of doing each program, but making sure that, you know, we're promoting an understanding of, you know, each culture, and we're enriching an understanding, and we're purposeful in those respects, so that people will walk away and, you know, learn something. I think with the diversity showcase, it's entertaining, and it would be interesting to see if anyone's walked away and learned anything. I don't know how you gauge that, or if you do. I'm always talking about surveys, pre and post surveys, how you capture responses, just to make sure that if there's anything else that could be done, that we're including everything, especially with such a small committee. So
Right.
yeah.
And each group that performs at Diversity Showcase is charged with also having an educational component. So they are asked. So it could be a dance demonstration that talks about the history of the dance. It could be incorporating some cultural historic facts.
Okay.
And we do have the game where we use the spinning wheel during Diversity Showcase for the games.
Okay.
And when this wheel is spun, it lands on a culture, and we have a list of questions that we then ask, and it's mostly children playing, and provide them with the answers, you know, if they don't know. So they are learning, you know, something cultural about each of the cultures represented.
Okay. Okay. And is there a flyer for? I mean, since there's like a space for 11 people, are there flyers that are being made to promote? I guess the committees that need more members.
Yeah,
Okay.
yes, we've been doing that. So yeah, specifically at Diversity Showcase, we had committee members there talking it up to people with flyers, and so at our events, committee members play a large role in
Recruiting other
recruiting.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. Because I know churches and other places, it'll be good to drop those things off if possible.
All right. Do we have anybody from the public who'd like to add anything, make a comment, ask a question on this topic? Going once, going twice. Go ahead, Ken.
Could I say one more thing, just based on Councilman Harris's comment? That this probably something that's been thought of before, but a lot of our residents come from countries and from stations in life in which participating in government is really a long stretch for them. And so they're here and they have the same attitude, and they, in many cases, don't know anything about our government, don't understand it. So maybe we could think in terms of general education about how the government of Gaithersburg works. I don't have any meat to put on the bones, but that's just something that occurred to me.
Great, thank you.
That's good. That would be helpful.
All right.
So, you know, I think, you know, Lorianne had some good suggestions, but I would add that, you know, in the exhibits, the art exhibits that we've had, you know, usually have an opening reception when many of the artists are there and are able to talk about their work, reflect on how their culture and their immigration experience, if they had one, or their family history has a place in their art. And so I think that's a really good way to start that exhibit. And we've done it for African American artists, we've done it for Latino artists, we've done it for Asian artists. So, you know, I think that we've been able to, and the committee's done a good job of timing those exhibitions with the annual celebrations, the national celebrations, and recognition of those events. So, but I think there's certainly always opportunity, and certainly in the Diversity Showcase, even when the dance troupes are doing their dance, usually before they begin the dance, they explain the origin of the dance, the music, etc. So I think that, you know, you guys are on the right track. I think we just need to kind of emphasize that a little bit more and figure it, you know, take advantage of the opportunity to educate. And I think what Ken said about how people aren't really familiar with, you know, the transparency and openness of our government here, I think there's lots of different ways we can do that. But I think one of the best ways is to invite people to talk about their culture and share it with us. And so that's why I think the Diversity Showcase, these art exhibits, and other programs that we do are really important to helping people understand that we're an open, inclusive city and we want their participation. So anyway, keep up the good work.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank
Let
you.
us move on to our briefing from the Cultural Arts Advisory Committee.
Thanks. Okay. Oops. All right. Let's see. Okay. Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Loretta McNally, and I am a member of the Gaithersburg Cultural Arts Advisory Committee and the Artistic Director of the Montgomery Playhouse, an 89-year-old community theater nonprofit. Montgomery Playhouse has been a fixture in Gaithersburg since 1972 and an Arts Barn theater partner since 2002. I'm delighted to be here tonight to update you on the accomplishments and activities of the Cultural Arts Advisory Committee. The committee is comprised of 9 members that are drawn from the community and represent a range of cultural interests and experiences. The committee provides guidance on the city's cultural arts facilities and programs, including arts in public places. And our special thanks go to our council liaison, Michael Sesma. There are currently 3 vacancies on the committee. These volunteer positions will be promoted in Gaithersburg via press releases, news articles, social media, notice on the city website, and outreach to the community, civic, cultural arts, and neighborhoods. Our goal is to assemble a dedicated, inclusive group of volunteers that represent the diversity of Gaithersburg citizens. It is the mission of the committee to advise the mayor and council and the city staff on arts programs and facilities in order to, quote, enhance the quality of life in Gaithersburg by developing and supporting cultural, social, and economic opportunities that allow artistic expression and creative excellence to flourish and develop to their fullest potential, unquote. How do we know when the committee has succeeded with its mission? One way is to assess the growth and stability of the local arts community. Anecdotally, we can say that today the arts are robust in Gaithersburg. Not only does the city provide a comprehensive array of cultural opportunities, but as every new housing community opens, citizens are offered a variety of arts opportunities, from Spectrum's free outdoor summer concerts to the amazing art studio in downtown Crown, and everything in between. Another way to measure success is to look at the economic impact arts and culture have on Gaithersburg's economy. To gauge this impact, staff turned to the 2015 Arts and Economic Prosperity Study produced by Americans for the Arts. The 2015 Arts and Economic Prosperity Study documents the economic contribution of the arts in 341 diverse communities and regions across the country, including Montgomery County. According to the study in 2015, arts producers in Gaithersburg spent $4 million on everything from paint to paper clips, from salaries to sodas. Nonprofit and for-profit arts and cultural organizations are businesses. They employ people. They produce goods and services, all while making our community a more vibrant place to live and to visit. Audiences for arts and culture plow money into the economy as well. In 2015, audiences spent $14.7 million in Gaithersburg, and that's in addition to any ticket cost. Together, the cultural arts businesses and their audiences generated an $18.7 million impact right here in Gaithersburg. This in turn supported almost 500 full-time equivalent jobs, jobs that can't be shipped overseas or out of state. How do arts audiences help the local economy? Well, they buy gas for their cars, pay for their parking, they go out to dinner before the show, have sodas and snacks during intermission. They buy souvenirs and art and keep the teenage babysitters in business. Last year, nearly 400,000 people attended arts and cultural programs in Gaithersburg. According to the study, those audience members spent an average of $22.43 above the cost of their tickets. That's money going right back to local merchants. The investment the city has made in growing and sustaining a vibrant arts environment is one of the key factors in why people and businesses move to our city and why Gaithersburg is becoming an arts destination. Just to remind the council, in 2015, the Art in Public Places Committee merged with the Cultural Arts Advisory Committee. This year, we've had some exciting new developments. The city's public art collection is currently comprised of 27 art installations on public and private property created by artists of regional, national, and international reputation. These artworks bring distinction to our community. The newest addition to the collection is the Children's Gatehouse at Constitution Gardens, created by sculptor J. Hall Carpenter and installed in August of this year. Here you can see the installed gatehouse on the left and the artist's model on your right. The finished artwork stands 6 feet tall, including the snail on the top. The flat panels are engraved with images of native plants and animals. Staff are working with Public Works Department to finalize the landscaping for this charming addition to our award-winning garden. Other projects currently in progress are the Old Town Y site project. 52 artists and art groups responded to a call for artists. Submissions came from across the United States and Spain, Australia, and the UK. A panel of city staff, experts in the field, and other interested persons will review applications beginning in January and February. Staff will be contracting with the selected artist, Peter Crisco, in the new year to start the Diamond Farm Skate Spot project. The developers of the Fishman site were enthusiastic about incorporating public art into their project. They have proposed mosaic art on the side of the building that fronts the new Old Town Plaza. Innovation by artist Stephen Weitzman is a site-specific installation that has been approved for downtown Crown. The developer, Westbrook, has confirmed that the site preparation will start in January and the project will be completed by the end of April. The proposed branding, let's start that one again. The proposed still not right. The proposed branding banner project for Old Town and Route 355 is moving forward. Pepco has reached out to staff to identify likely poles. Once this process is complete, staff will focus on banner design. The artwork you see here was created by Loma Irma of California and is an example of branding that celebrates community characteristics such as green spaces, recreation, local architecture, and the arts. Money from the Public Art Fund will be used to support this project. The Public Art Fund accumulates money from developers. When a site is deemed inappropriate for public art, the developer makes a contribution to the fund equivalent to the total amount they would have spent on public art. Currently, the fund has a balance of $31,000 provided by Federal Express, iFly, and Carvana. Last year, the committee reported on a plan to study the feasibility of building a performing arts venue for the city. For years, residents have expressed interest in building a large performance hall. The committee undertook the task of collecting and analyzing data from the current inventory of cultural facilities within a 30-mile radius of Gaithersburg and exploring potential facility partners that would make a purpose-built venue sustainable. Thus far, committee members have interviewed 11 facility managers of large venues. 23 mid-sized to small arts venues responded to a SurveyMonkey instrument. Committee members will be meeting in 2019 to further analyze the data. You'll be hearing more about this effort in the future. Another important initiative the committee focused on this year is how the city can support visual and performing arts pop-ups without taking on the liability or the financial responsibilities of such projects. After many discussions, the committee agreed that the best approach would be to teach artists and arts groups how to, quote, pop up, unquote, themselves. The committee proposes to offer an arts enterprise toolkit, which includes trainings, resources, connections with business people and other artists, and mentoring. This approach aligns with our mission to support economic opportunities that allow artistic expression and creative excellence to flourish and develop. In closing, the Cultural Arts Advisory Committee has 5 strategic goals for 2019. First, guide the Arts in Public Places program by serving as reviewers for projects and making recommendations that will solidify Gaithersburg's reputation as a progressive city with a strong arts presence. Second, analyze data and prepare recommendations for performing arts venue. Third, meet with artists and businesses to develop the Arts Enterprise Toolkit. 4, advise and promote the city's cultural arts programs. And 5, support the city's efforts to infuse arts and culture into city programming and ensure they remain accessible to all our citizens. Thank you for your attention this evening, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Thanks to all of our committee members and staff. This is like all of our committees, this is one very near and dear to my heart and to everybody up here. I'm particularly enthusiastic these days about a couple of pet projects, what I consider to be pet projects, the Y-Site project and the Pepco banner project, which the latter of which calls to mind the drone initiative that we had here that took us 2 years to get the licensing and hiring the consultant and jump through all the hoops to operate a single drone. The getting banners on Pepco poles is almost, perhaps at the end will be just as bad as that. But we are making progress. There are hoops that we are jumping over. So thank you all. I'm gonna let Councilmember Sesma, as the liaison, start the question comments.
Okay, well, thank you for a great report. Much of it I'd seen before, and there were some surprises there for me as well. I think what we've, if we look at all the aspects of arts and culture that the committee, in a way, has been charged with developing for the city, we're talking about our facilities where we can display and share art and culture. We have galleries and performing spaces in the open air as well as enclosed. We have the Arts Barn, we have Pavilion, we have a new mobile bandstand, so that's a great thing. Galleries we have in several of our buildings, and I think we have to take the opportunity to use any space, any public space available to display some kind of art, some kind of media that we call art. And certainly our parks can be used as places, but we also share property with new communities development, and where they also contribute public art for the enjoyment of their residents as well as the people who happen to be part of that community as well. So then we can't forget the performances and the special events as well, which your committee has a role in as well. So I think your analysis shows clearly that there's a strong link to cultural development and art with economic development. So it's, there's a natural interaction between that committee and your committee in terms of looking how both of those charges can kind of synergize with each other. Certainly, if we look at the work of the Multicultural Affairs Committee, we heard about storytelling and music and performing arts and literary arts. Those are all things, again, that the Cultural Arts Advisory Committee can be involved in as well. So I think what's exciting is to talk about the possibility of new projects going forward. We certainly have a lot of public art projects moving forward. I like the gatehouse at Constitution Garden, which I'm looking forward to the plantings that will happen in the spring to accentuate that. And we already have people coming from far and wide to see Constitution Gardens in the natural play space. I think this is another nice feature. The idea of a performing arts facility we've been talking about for a long time. I've talked about it for a long time. Is that, you know, in a county of 1 million people, there isn't a real hall where you can have several thousand people come to use that hall for a variety of different types of performances and activities. And I think it's possible that we could find a place in Gaithersburg to do that. But we're going to need some partners. We're going to need the county to partner. We're going to need some private developers to partner and some property owners to partner as well. So, but you know, as I've said a number of times, the county spends hundreds of thousands of dollars every year in June or May to hold graduation ceremonies outside of Montgomery County for all of our high schools. There isn't one place in Montgomery County where a high school, even now, even the smallest high school, can barely use the Strathmore Arts Center. So there's clearly a need just for something like that. We'd rather have that money spent. I think Montgomery County taxpayers would rather have their money spent in the county, and if we could find a way, why not have them spend it in Gaithersburg, which would be a good thing. So I think there are things to look forward to. The other thing that we talked about a lot of things at these meetings. They tend to be marathon sessions. I try to make most of them. We have good attendance, but the other thing we've talked about is a mural project. The pop-up art idea was great. I think there are also blank spaces, vertical spaces throughout the city that could be used as sites for murals, and I think we need to explore that further. It's a way for a community to develop an identity around that kind of art and develop some pride in the community, both the young people and the artists who live in that community or families live in that community, but also to provide some aspects that make the community more beautiful. So there's a nice recent example of a mural on private property over at, I guess it's Diamond Square, not Diamond Square, Diamond or Quince Orchard Shopping Center, the wall. Federal Realty owns the property, but they have a nice new mural there across from McDonald's. So I think there's an example of how we can look at that. So anyway, I could go on and on, as I usually do, as I'm reminded, but I'm going to let everybody else pontificate and share some ideas as well.
Okay, we'll move on to Ryan.
Well, I'll echo all the comments about the nice work that you all do and how much we appreciate your contributions. And you know, the mayor has often said, and a lot of us have often said over the last several years, that Gaithersburg has become a cultural destination, which we're really proud of. And as you explained in your presentation, that's not only of value for its own sake, for the quality of life and enrichment of our people, but also for economic development. It has a positive impact, as you all noted. As we were talking about exploring a possible larger arts venue, couldn't help but notice that we have in the audience our good friend and our state Senator Cheryl Kagan, who has been a patron and a champion of the arts as long as I've known her. And Mike talked about, needing to partner with the county and with the private sector, but certainly we would also love to partner with the state in exploring resources for this kind of an arts venue. And I know we can look to Senator Kagan's leadership to help with that, however it ends up manifesting itself, whether it's request for maybe some state funding down the road or other partnerships with state agencies or other folks that she might be able to bring together to the table with us. So I am very, very interested in that idea as well. It's a big idea. It's something that's very complicated. There are some factors beyond our control, market forces and other things happening that will in part determine where these types of performing arts venues end up being located. But we will certainly do everything within our power to support the exploration of this, because I do think it would be wonderful to have something like that in the city of Gaithersburg, and I think it makes a lot of sense for us to be the host of that kind of a venue and a facility. But let me just again echo all the thanks for the great work that this committee does.
Neil.
Tough acts to follow. I think, again, just ditto to all the kudos for the good work that the committee does in promoting the public arts in the city of Gaithersburg, which is, it's very important for us to focus on art in the environment, performing arts, visual arts, etc. Not just for the economic benefits, but just for the quality of life benefits, something that really enhances the quality of being in Gaithersburg by being able to wander around and see things and go to even the local shopping mall now has a theater company, which is awesome. In general, whatever you need, I'm very supportive of it. So, if we can find ourselves a venue, it would be great. If we can make ourselves more of a destination for creative artists, the way I know Frederick has been designated, if there's a way to get more of that involved here in Gaithersburg, we'd love to see more of that going on as well. Thank you.
Lorianne.
Well, I'll just echo what my colleagues have said about this committee and the great work that you all do. I just have a few questions about the presentation. I see that some of the money comes from the Developers Fund. Is there a budget for this committee for the projects?
The committee does not have a budget, but
Okay.
the public art program is part of the CIP budget, and each of those public art programs that you saw, projects, not programs, has its own budget in the CIP. The one you just mentioned is several years ago we had 3 different developers whose public spaces were not actually conducive to public art. One of them was Federal Express, and it wasn't actually a public space. So we just said, well, you can give us that money, we'll put it in a fund, and we will use that for some of the things that the city wants to do that is for the public.
Now, do these businesses have a say in any of the projects that actually are created, or?
In the projects that are going to be created from the Public Art Fund, no. Once they give us the equivalent of what they would have spent, they're done.
Okay.
If we're working with someone like the Fishman site or Westbrook here with the Downtown Crown, we work closely with them to help them realize their dream, but also to make sure that it fits in with what the city wants.
Okay. And is there a criteria that the committee uses to select projects?
Yes, indeed. I'd be happy to send you our guidelines, which have all that criteria. And the criteria actually is tailored to each site as well.
Okay. Because, when I see some of the structures in the community, I want to make sure that they reflect the mission of the committee and especially the diversity and inclusion of the community. And, it may seem insignificant, but as, someone of color, children of color, I want them to see themselves reflected or the diversity of the community reflected in some of the artwork. In the city of Rockville, I don't know if anyone's been on the historical walk through the city. They have historical landmarks, and then the county just put forth a budget to expand the historical landmarks across the county so that those areas are reflected. And so I just think that this committee has a prime opportunity to really showcase the diversity in the artwork that we decide to put here for generations to come. And so I love what's been happening and the attention to detail, and I love the idea of a mural. We have lots of spaces right here in Old Town. I think we've talked about having some artwork on the back of the new apartment building. I think lighting, showcases have been explored. So I think something that speaks to the heart of what Gaithersburg is about, and would be nice to see some more emphasis in that direction. But great presentation.
Thank you.
Rob?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. I must say, as a resident of the city, when you combine the arts project that we've got, what Michelle's doing in her department, and the book festival, Gaithersburg is hitting well above its weight in culture and arts, and it's just very important for that quality of life above and beyond what I guess could even be expected in a city of our size. So kudos to you for everything that's going on here, and I do like the ideas that are being discussed about the mosaics. We talked about that last year as well. Rockville has a fairly robust program going on. I was going to comment like Mike did. I noticed at Federal Realty's site on Quince Orchard Road, the mural, and it really adds to the space. Now, it's kind of on an odd wall that it's just a wall, and behind it's a loading zone. So it's not, I wouldn't say it's exactly integrated into the design of the site as much as it could be, but it certainly does accentuate and add to that area, as do the arts projects we have throughout the city. I will confess that I have not actually been by to purchase my daughter Risa a painting. I purchased my son Julian a painting a few years back, and I try to make as many arts exhibits as I can, but I need to come by at one of the next arts exhibits to procure some fine art for my daughter. Let's see. Yeah, so the exhibits, the resident artists, all the programming that goes on down at the arts barn, it just really adds to the community, and I think any programming to get a mayor rapping is it's shooting for the moon, and you got him to land there.
Yeah, really.
And it was Hamilton themed, so I guess that's how you entice him into it.
Hearing him rap did feel like I was on the moon.
Yeah. but thank you very much for all the hard work that you do.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll pass that along to everybody.
Do we have anybody from the public who'd like to speak on this topic? Please, come on up, Jim. You know the rules.
I know the rules. Jim McNulty, Pembroke View Lane in Gaithersburg. I just wanted to echo the call for a public performing arts space in the city. I'm sure I'm not the first person to suggest this, but I'm going to say that, I think that goal would dovetail nicely into the revitalization of Lake Forest Mall. I think that particular space needs a gem that would be there, and you look at the Strathmore and the beautiful development that was done around that, and if Councilman Sesma's point about graduations, I think, is well taken, and having something like that could, be a brand new gem for the center of our city, I think would answer would solve a lot of challenges that the city is currently facing. So I'm sure I'm not the first person to suggest it, but I just wanted to put it out there because I think it would, I think it could be tremendous. So thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other comments? Okay. We thank you all very much for all your good work and for this presentation. I'm going to ask that Tom and Henry come up to the table, but I'm going to put you guys on pause for just a sec because Senator Kagan did walk in, and she wanted to give us a brief, I stress a brief update on what's coming up in this session. Yeah, up at the podium. And this date worked out for her schedule, whereas no other Monday before the session works out. So we wanted to give her a few minutes to tell us whatever you want to tell us about the upcoming session.
I did it in just over 3 minutes in Rockville, although Gaithersburg gets its own. I will give a little bit tailored here. Cheryl Kagan, very proud to be Gaithersburg's senator as well as Rockville's. And as the mayor just said, I'm reporting before we go into session on January 9th for our 90-day session. As you may know, about a third of the Senate is going to be new, and we have dozens of new delegates, including a new delegate here, Julie Polakovich-Carr, Rockville City Council member, who will join delegates Kumar Barve, Jim Gilchrist, and me to represent you in Annapolis. We're going to be dealing with a broad range of issues, including education funding. The Kerwin Commission is finally going to have a report, allegedly, so we'll see what that looks like, and my committee is one of the ones that will be hearing the proposals. Montgomery County is committed to standing together, and with 32 votes out of 188, we hope to be heard and make sure that Montgomery County is not shortchanged as public education funding is analyzed. Want to talk about briefly some of the issues that I'll be working on, including as a municipal superstar with our own council member, Ryan Spiegel, hopefully president-elect and hopefully succeeding, Rockville's Mayor, Bridget Newton. Really great and very proud to have District 17 represented as our municipal leadership in Maryland. And congratulations, Ryan, on all the accomplishments last year. And we've got a little bit more to go, so we want to get that done in 2019. Many of you know, and I've spoken about it quite a lot here and on social media and everywhere else, that 3 people have died in my district when 911 has failed. I passed 2 911 bills this past year and chaired the statewide 911 commission. We just last week finished and submitted a 65-page report to the governor and the General Assembly. In it were 23 recommendations, and as I have been saying, I was hoping for consensus, but what I got was unanimity on all 23 recommendations, which is very exciting. The bill that I'm working to finalize will be introduced as a bipartisan bill, and hopefully we will be working towards passage. 22 states are ahead of where Maryland is in updating our 911 technology, and not only technology, but preparing for cybersecurity threats, upgrading our staffing, recruitment, training, and retention, dealing with oversight, and then adjusting our funding model. So it's very complex and very needed. And I know that Lynn, your leadership, MML, it's one of the state priorities for MACO, the Maryland Association of Counties, and I think we're going to have a great coalition of folks all supporting this in unison. Ranked choice voting, the hearing is 1 week from tonight. I'm sponsoring that with Delegate Ludke to allow Maryland, Montgomery County voters the possibility of having their voter intent better reflected. It's being done in Maine, in Minnesota, and San Francisco, and Australia for about 100 years now. And basically, rather than just having to pick 1 out of 6 for county executive, or just 4 for county council out of 33, people could actually say, here's my first choice, and if she or he doesn't win, then here's my second choice and third choice, and let them better reflect their plans. So anyone who wants to express their views a week from tonight, the 17th, in Rockville. The governor has proposed expanding, widening I-270. We are very concerned about that, and we are engaged in making sure that no homes, neighborhoods, or businesses are adversely affected. And so we will stay vigilant on that, and we'll look forward to hearing Gaithersburg residents and the mayor and council's views on that as that continues to be discussed. Chief Tom Manger, our county police chief, and I are working together again to bring Freedom to Serve, which is the bill that I brought last year. I had 41 out of 47 senators as co-sponsors. We got it through the House, but we ran out of time to get it out of the Senate. We're bringing it back, and it would enable anyone who is a legal permanent resident who has served in our armed forces and been honorably discharged, they would have the option of applying to be police officers. Doesn't guarantee that they're going to get it, but you might have seen the Washington Post article on the challenges with recruiting police officers. We need diversity, but we also need numbers and quality. So people who've already been trained, already been background checked, who have served our country, and who are interested in serving our community, we want to open those doors and make it an option for folks to do that. Polystyrene, Gaithersburg was a leader on that, banning the styrofoam in our restaurants, takeout packages. Don't ever drink hot coffee or hot tea out of a styrofoam cup. You'll be leaching cancerous chemicals into your beverages. Don't do that. Don't take home your Chinese food leftovers or anything in polystyrene. You can't do it in Montgomery County or in Gaithersburg anyway. I'll be working on consumer protection and many other election reform and other issues. Redistricting will be an issue this year as a result of the court case and the impending census that will start in April. The last two things, I just want to make sure that we get funding from the governor for a new police station for Gaithersburg, and look forward to continuing to partner with you to see whether we can get a larger number in the governor's budget than we could get in a bond bill. So I continue to be eager and at your service on that. And then we had talked about a District 17 night in Annapolis. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to do that, but I want to invite anyone watching or anyone hearing about it to please stay in touch. Consider visiting us during our 90-day session in Annapolis. You can also stay in touch through social media, through my website, and everything else. We love hearing from you, and we love having you visit. Happy to take any questions.
Well, I don't want to take us off track from this meeting, and I know that you're aware and always receptive to our legislative agenda. You have an event coming up with the D17 team was January 6th?
Thank you for mentioning that. Yep, I was trying not to take too much time, but yes, on Sunday, January 6th, the four of us, Barve, Gilchrist, Polakovich, Carr, and I, are going to talk a little bit more in depth about the legislative issues, and we'd be delighted to have people join us. It's going to be in Gaithersburg on purpose, and it's going to be at Boar Park. So join us, and I think it's at 1:30,
yeah, I think
but
you're
I
right.
need to
It's
check.
1:30.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So it's free. We'll have some snacks there, and the four of us will be there. We'll make a presentation, and then we'd be happy to take questions. So
Okay.
thank you for mentioning that, Mr. Mayor.
We are grateful for your work, your service, your partnership. It's top notch as always. But I do want to keep us on track for this,
Absolutely.
For this meeting.
Can I do one more quick thing?
Yeah.
Having had the arts and nonprofits represented, I fancy myself to be the senator for the nonprofit sector, and I've passed 3 significant bills for the nonprofit sector. And I just want to make sure that any Gaithersburg nonprofits who are not aware of NIMBLE, which is the state fund that I created, it's an acronym, Nonprofit Interest-Free Micro Bridge Loan. And what it means is if any nonprofit has a confirmed contract or grant from the City of Gaithersburg, Montgomery County, the State of Maryland, or federal government, they can get up to $25,000 interest-free if there's a delay between the time they get notified of the grant and the time they get the funds. Sometimes government expects you to spend the money, hire the people, rent the space, perform the services, and then they pay you back. And for some smaller nonprofits, that's a real challenge. And NIMBLE is working really well, and we just want to make sure folks are aware of it.
Thank you very much, Cheryl.
Thank you.
Anybody have a very, very 10-second quick remark?
We know where to find you.
Okay.
Indeed you do.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Senator.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay. Tom Lonergan, Henry Bernstein, Economic Development Committee report.
Thank you, Mayor.
Can you
Thank
talk,
you guys for your
Can you
patience.
talk as fast as her?
I know you can, Henry.
Henry can.
I'll be in my sofa in like 3 minutes, right? And then-
I'm just going to
Watching
pass it
something.
over to this guy, Henry Bernstein, longtime committee member. We're thankful to have him here tonight and for all he's contributed to the committee over the last few years, so I'll pass it on to him.
Thanks, Tom. So I'll just start off by saying something that you already know. You have great staff, and it really makes the job of the Economic Development Committee a lot easier because they're always prepared, salient issues, get our feedback. Can't really ask for, as being a committee member, for much more than that. So
Thank you.
kudos,
Thank you for
kudos
saying
to
that.
them. Sharon, I know, is not here and gets a rest tonight. But, she's equally as relied upon. When you have an issue and you want to call them, you can talk to either one of them and get the answer you're looking for. So we're appreciative of that. So you can see from our committee roster, it's a diverse committee in a lot of ways in terms of large business, small business, retailers, local residents that are in business, real estate people. It really kind of covers the gamut. And I believe this year Neil is the liaison, and he faithfully comes to most, if not all, of the meeting, and we appreciate his feedback. And I think you'll see somewhere along the line that he also is a presenter, and we appreciate the depth of knowledge that he brings to the table, and I know that you all are aware of that. So relative to our strategic direction, I think you all know that I'm a former government economic development guy and went over to the dark side 13 or 14 years ago, and in the private sector now. And the view from both sides is kind of interesting, looking back in now from the private side to the public side, and working together with this group and some others that I participate with. But it all boils down to, as far back as you can go, it's about taxes and jobs. And specifically, you talk about the tax base, but I think we all know that the only way that you can have the resources to do all the great things that you want to do in terms of some of the things we've heard about tonight, and many others that I know you all are very supportive of, you need to have a good balance of job creation, job retention, those kind of keep the tax coffers going. And I think significantly that you want to keep the tax burden off as much as you can of the residential community, and not that you want to overload it on the commercial, but to have a good balance. And that's a difficult and tricky act to follow, which is something I learned a long time ago. And really promoting the city as a good place to do business and create jobs is of paramount. I think the last point on here about a diversity of employment opportunities, it really kind of boils down to you need kind of the whole gamut, obviously, of employment, because
Sorry, I can only do that when you're listening.
Was it something I said? Even when you have a significant number or amount of high-tech, high-paying, whatever the jobs are, you also need the people, to work in the retailers, and the restaurants, et cetera, because if you ever walked into a local restaurant and they'll say, well, we didn't have, we couldn't find servers, you need to have that whole diversity of employment capabilities here. And I think it's, that's something to strive for. You're ahead of me, okay. So I think the committee is putting forth an effort to have their approaches to focus on what do we have to do, and this is, I think, promoted by the Economic Development Group, but the committee, I think, agrees with this approach to focus on retaining businesses in the city and help, what can we do to help them grow and prosper, and to get our ideas and thoughts about that. What do we do to attract, what does the city need to do to attract new businesses? I think it's significant. I think one of the great opportunities that we have, and that you've done a good job on, but let's not rest on our laurels, is promoting the biotech community. It's a place where you get, some of the most high-paying jobs. It's an area, I believe, that it's almost a philanthropic type of thing where, there's new discoveries, all us baby boomers that are looking for significant healthcare things to happen. Many of them can happen through this particular industry sector. And I think if you look at the statistics relative to that industry sector and other related sectors, the city of Gaithersburg is unbelievably well positioned, and actually garners over 50% of all the biotech companies up and down the 270 corridor. And that's a pretty significant and telling statistics when you look at from Bethesda, all the way up to the through Frederick County, that half of those companies are located right here in the city of Gaithersburg. So that's an asset that you have, and we have, and that we should stay on top of, because it happens to be an industry sector. If you've ever gone to any of the major biotechnology conferences across the country or internationally, that every single state, every single city, jurisdiction would like to have a piece of that pie, because of the significance of that industry sector. So, congrats on that, and let's keep going. And I think building strong relationships with the business community and other economic development groups and agencies, and being an ombudsman is very important. One thing I would like to comment about is I do some work in the chamber, as many of you know, and one of the things that kind of keeps coming up as a repeating theme is, do we get our fair share of attention from, countywide in the upper county area? And I think that that's an issue that it's worthy of continuing to remind that, downtown Silver Spring is important, the East County new development area is important, the White Flint area is important, et cetera, but there's a lot of assets in the up county as a group, and Tom has assisted as well. We've tried to put across, especially that we have a new economic development organization, to make sure that there's an understanding that when there's a new prospect in town, when there's an opportunity, that somebody has to make sure that the up county is included in that. So I'm not going to read through all these topics, but I think you can see that there are many significant areas that we've looked at in the Economic Development Committee. I think most notably our presentation, which I mentioned earlier by Neil, was really eye-opening about transportation. I've seen it in at least 2, maybe 3 different venues, because he gets around. But that presentation, I think, is really eye-opening that, we need not just transit, but we need roads too. And, if anybody's kind of resting on their laurels that it's only transit that's going to make, us be able to get around back and forth, that's a misnomer. And to see the statistics, et cetera, that he has to back that up, I think, pretty telling. Do you want to add anything, by the way?
No,
well,
you're doing fine.
Okay. Please chime in.
Mm-hmm.
So, for 2019, we've got some things that we want to talk about. I think, they're notable to what you all are dealing with relative to, the mall and the 355 corridor revitalization, of course, Old Town, et cetera. I think I've been to a couple of presentations about the new opportunity zones, and it's a little bit of a complicated and complex issue, but there could be significant benefits to the business community and to the geographical jurisdiction that those are located in. And I believe there's a fair number of opportunity zones in the city, and that that should be thoroughly vetted. And I think it's something that I know I went to one early presentation, and everybody in the room kind of sat dumbfounded because they didn't really understand it, and I'm not sure if the presenter understood it. So
it wasn't me.
And it wasn't Tom, right? But I think it's something that is now becoming more talked about, and that there are some significant advantages that the business community can take advantage of that will ultimately help the local jurisdictions. The website, I can't opine on that, but if Tom wants to throw in, but I think that's obvious that having a great website to look at, when you're the business community looking at what programs are available, what are the significant topics is important. And of course, we talked a little bit earlier about diversifying the local economy. So it's a pretty active and verbal committee. There's I don't think we don't really argue, but I think there's a lot of opinions that come out in the committee, and I think the staff does a good job in throwing all the issues out on the table. And a lot of times I have to admit that I'm the person that says, well, do you need a vote on this, or do you need consensus on this? And to try to bring everybody together to see if we could kind of come to a common agreement about what we're talking about, because there are a lot of issues relative to should we or shouldn't we in terms of either a project or a regulatory issue that's out there, or, you know, should we allow, or, you know, should we give our opinion about you guys coming up with something to allow, you know, something to happen within the city. And, you know, I think we always feel that our opinion is taken into consideration and has some value. And, you know, everybody who's there is pretty serious about, you know, participating and feeling loved, if you will. So thank you very much for the opportunity to come and speak. And if there's anything I can answer, I'd be happy to.
Thank you, Henry. Thank you, Tom. We appreciate you and your fellow committee members. We do rely on your advice, and we are very grateful for all the time and effort and passion that your committee members put into this. Gaithersburg is I would say, a very business-friendly place. I think we take a lot of pride in being that, and perhaps being a leader in Montgomery County in that regard. We enjoy that reputation, and I think that that comes through when you see the membership of this committee, and when you talk to individual committee members, I think people are generally pretty happy and pretty excited about what's going on in the city of Gaithersburg. So thank you for all that you contribute there too. I'm going to start with Councilmember Harris as the liaison.
All right, thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Henry and Tom, for the great presentation and the kind words. Henry, I want to single you out as you've been a great ally to the city as well on economic development areas. There was a side project going for a while where we were working with the county and the city of Rockville's economic development on ways to improve the lab space, and your organization was front and center. In fact, you stepped up and even bought a building and outfitted it yourselves to get more lab space in the city. So it's been great, and the committee membership has been a cross-section of the city. We've got representation from NIST and MedImmune, as well as many real estate people and other smaller businesses. So it's really been a great experience. I've been a member of the committee for a lot longer than I've sat up here at the dais, and it's always been very productive. Chance to review proposed plans and ideas of what's going on in the city, and to weigh in and to have the business perspective reflected and shared up here is incredibly valuable. So really, it's been a very strong committee, and I recommend it to people, although it's generally full. It looks from this list that we might have an opening or two at the moment.
Jeffrey Hines, a longtime member, did move out of state, so we now have we did get a new member, but I do believe there is one seat still available.
Is Tracy still on the committee?
She just resigned because she too moved out of.
All right, because I saw her. I noticed her name was missing. So yeah, we could probably squeeze one or two people in.
Yes.
So we'll keep our eyes open for more prospects. But kudos to everybody that's been involved. It's really been a great experience for me, and I think a very valuable resource for the city. So that's it for me. Thanks.
Thank you, Neil.
Lori Ann.
So this committee too holds a very special place in my heart. It was the second committee I joined, and lots of great minds around the table very early in the morning, and just being in a room where we can review plans and get perspectives from across the table, really help guide the decisions that we make, and it's an invaluable committee. Appreciate the work that's being done, and you're always responsive, and so yeah, I always appreciate hearing from you guys. And I think I spoke with Henry at the chamber dinner about venues, about really looking to the committee to guide what the vision for Lake Forest will be, and how we can really make it economically beneficial to the city year-round. And so I'll be looking forward to hearing recommendations and what else is to come in the
and I think we discussed, whichever of you is interested in coming to 704 Quince Orchard, while it's in the middle of construction, converting it from an office building to a lab
Yes.
facility. It's kind of an exciting time right now, so I've asked Tom if he wants to see if there's a time when any of you would like to come and take a look. We'd be delighted to have you.
We'll definitely be following up. And then I'm excited to see that Old Town is a priority and what's going to be happening in the opportunity zone. So I'll be looking forward to seeing what's going on. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Right.
Not too much more to add. You know, I also had the fortune to serve as liaison to the committee a couple of years back, and
Before I stole it from you.
that's right, before you stole it from me, I'll never forgive you. But you know, clearly, I mean, we have an impressive brain trust in that committee, even with, you know, members turning over at times. I mean, the folks who served on that, who have served and continue to serve on that committee, I mean, there's a lot of heft there. And I think that heft is reflected in the fact that every time the committee expresses a recommendation to the mayor and council or writes a letter on a topic, there's a lot of deference to that, rightly so. So I think we should continue to leverage that heft and expertise going forward. I think we're already doing a lot of good things. As Henry said, it's an exciting time on a lot of fronts. I just hope we see more of the same in the coming years. So thank you.
We'll go to Rob first and then Mike.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I guess I know I'm second fiddle to Ryan because I saw you looking at me first and I went to him. But I want to forgive you for that.
Don't read too much into that.
Yeah. Henry, it's good to see you. Thank you for the presentation.
I think it's in 3 times this week.
Yeah.
All you guys.
We're really lucky.
I particularly appreciate the color coordination that went on here. It just shows how in tune you are with city staff and the committee. I appreciate the work that you guys do. We hear some of it from Tom. We see some reports in the documents itself. And Neil tends to tell us what's going on at the committee. But I guess my question is there any way to capture the discussions that are going on so that they can be highlighted to us? Because it really is a fascinating and unique opportunity to have industry leaders here in Gaithersburg opining on stuff that we are pondering. And I'm not sure I see a product that would particularly some of the priorities for 2019, that would give us what you're thinking as a advisory body on these various things. Does that make sense to you, or is there anything?
I'm sure there's no. I mean, I understand what you're saying, and there's probably a pretty easy way for us to put something together monthly for the benefit of the mayor and council. To, you know, some bullets or highlights of what it is we were discussing.
Well, don't you publish the minutes?
Yeah.
We do publish the minutes, and it is in the monthly report. But if there was that we put together, but. The minutes are brief. It just kind of talks about the topic, and I don't know if you're thinking about maybe a little bit more detail of what was discussed or points.
That, yes. So that, and you know, one of the things, for example, with the Environmental Affairs Committee, I've been pushing them to do is think of ways to move the city forward, and then we'll push stuff to the council for votes. And we've had some things come up for vote on the council based on ideas that were first brain trusted on the EAC, and I think. You know, given the amount of expertise there, you know, is there a way to perhaps, ponder ideas in the economic development arena that would then be able to filter up to us so that we can think outside the box on things, and not just the toolbox grant?
I think I know what you mean.
Just think about it.
Toolbox is a good thing.
Yes,
well,
yes.
I think we've done that, though. I think we have a history of doing that, actually.
Let me ask you this to follow up on Rob's question. If a good discussion comes, if out of a good discussion at the Economic Development Committee comes a good idea that could be of use to the city in policy-wise, would you then bring it up to mayor and council, or put it into a memo? Like currently, would that be the case?
It is currently the case that when, as Henry said, there are topics that we discussed that warrant a vote or the committee taking a position on something, in which case we will put it in a memo to all of you or to the planning commission or whatever body would be receiving it. So monthly they discuss projects, they discuss regulatory issues. I don't know if you're thinking about maybe a little bit more abstract or things that they might be talking about that aren't necessarily one of those two things that might be advice to the mayor and council on something. Is that?
I think mundane and abstract. It vacillates, but.
It's early in the morning when I need that.
It's just, I read through the packets, I hear what people are saying. I'm just not, I don't know. We'll talk offline.
That's fine.
It's probably the easier way to do it.
Okay. Mike?
Well, just to carry on with what Rob talked about, and thank you for the report. I think it's nice to see the diversity of thought, ideas, and priorities as well. I think one thing I do notice, though, is that if I look at the committee, I only see one woman on the committee, and I think you need to do something about it. I know Tracy just left, but I think we could do better in Gaithersburg to find some other expertise that might also be female. So, and I'm glad that you agree with that. I knew you would. So, anyway, I think the idea that that you guys are kind of could be the birthplace for some of the things, the concepts and programs or initiatives that we might consider going forward, including as part of a strategic plan associated with a specific priority, I think is a good idea. And that's how we should use our advisory committees anyway, whether it's the environmental affairs or multicultural affairs or cultural arts advisory committee or economic and business development. So I think to hear about the diversity of employment opportunities and diversity of businesses here is pretty important. We were at almost all of us in the room here were at the dais here and we're at the ribbon cutting this morning for a new restaurant location at Rio Washingtonian. And what was exciting to me, it's not just the new space and how vital that space appears to be and how it takes advantage of all of the features of Rio Washingtonian in terms of being a place where people can mingle, socialize, enjoy good times, but also do business. The fact that business now, brand new business just opened this week, is going to employ 180 full-time employees in Gaithersburg. I don't know of any other. That's pretty good job growth for 1 month. And the fact that the city facilitated the approval, tear down, and construction of a new building in basically less than a year, I think, for that site. It says a lot about how business-friendly we are and how we will facilitate things that are going to work to help diversify our economy. So, great example. I would love to find some more like that, especially if it ends up being technology or business-related. Kind of not, restaurants and entertainment is important, but I think we need to have a sustainable economy. We need high-paying professional jobs, whether it's science or some other kind of commercial entity. So, but I think we're on the right track, and certainly we have a lot of wisdom to draw on from your committee. And I think in the 14 years I've been on the council, this is probably the committee that's kind of evolved the most in terms of its outlook and its membership and the perspective. And I think a lot of that has to do with staff, but a lot of it has to do with the people in the community that are willing to be part of that community, this committee, and contribute these ideas. So kudos to you for that, and I look forward to hearing some of your recommendations about Old Town, about Lake Forest Mall, and maybe even about this performance facility venue that came up tonight, and the Cultural Arts Advisory Committee report. So the opportunity to interact with our committees, as I've said before when we had other presentations, I think that's pretty important, because that's how we ensure that there's this common thread and emphasis on quality of life, and how that everything contributes to that is pretty important. So I'd like to see that going forward as well. So thank you very much.
Lorianne, you had one more thing?
Yes, I had a question about the soft office market, because I know that we have very limited space left for any new market, new office space to be built. And so I'm just wondering, as we're thinking about redeveloping Old Town and Lake Forest Mall and other areas, the limited areas we have left, are we looking at office space? Are we hoping that office space will come back in demand? And then I wanted to know if we have started thinking about the first floor in Old Town, those empty spaces, and repurposing them for some other ideas. Like I've seen people do dance studios, party spaces, so just wanted to get an update.
Well, I'm sure either of us could provide an update on the state of the office market, but I guess the short answer is that yes, we would obviously like to see new office inventory, state-of-the-art, modern. We haven't had a new office building constructed in Gaithersburg in almost 10 years, but that's largely because demand was soft for a long time and rents were not high enough to support new construction. Gaithersburg is a city of micro markets, so what rents are at one side are not what they are at the other. We think, approaching a place where, particularly in the Rio and Crown area, the rents are getting high enough where potentially new office construction could come, not this year, but that would be the place we would see it first, and we'd like to see more of it. So yes, we monitor it all the time, but we are aware that this is a product that has not been financeable for some time, for many reasons, but most of them financial. But we're probably getting closer to that spot. But lab space conversion and new construction is becoming something that, and flex space is what they call it, is there is high demand and sufficient rents to start supporting new construction of that. I don't know if you'd say it differently.
No, I think you put it well. I think the issue is when you look up and down the 270 corridor from Bethesda all the way up to Frederick, there's still a significantly high vacancy rate in office space. And so when you've got existing office space sitting there that's becoming kind of functionally obsolete, but it's still there and it's not fully rented, it's hard to then build new because it's hard to compete because the rents haven't risen, as Tom said, to where they need to be. So it's kind of a tough thing to deal with. But you know, when you look at markets like the Washingtonian area, the rents have escalated to the point where it could support new construction. So, you know, probably the silver lining of the whole thing is, well, maybe the entire city doesn't have the capability, but at least there are spots here and there, and you know, and then it takes kind of somebody to do a leap of faith, like the lab conversion, which, you know, I have to tell you, you know, it's a little bit scary because there's not my money, of course, because it was through a group that was put together within my company, but the reinvestment into that building, the multi-million-dollar reinvestment to that, it's yet to be seen, even though there's a demand in the lab market, whether the tenants will pay those rents, because when you combine the rent that's necessary to service the loan and the operating expenses on top of that for electric, water, all those things, it starts to get to be a number that will make your eyebrows stand up a little bit, and you know, the tenants have to be willing to bear the brunt of that cost. So, you know, I think the positive is that I think there is a positive side to that, and I think it is gonna make it. But you're looking at just within the last 3 years, the base rent for lab space has increased almost $10 a foot because of the lack of availability of the space. It's the supply and demand thing. You have a 2% vacancy rate for lab space, and whereas in the office market you have vacancy in the teens. So, you know, the market's kind of taking care of itself, but it's not quite there yet. So it's a tough balancing act for the development community. And, you know, a lot of people think, well, the developers have, you know, they can spend a lot of money and they can afford to do all these things, but it's the lenders that are lending them the money to execute the projects that, you know, if it doesn't make financial sense, they're not going to lend them the money. So it's it's still a little bit tricky, but I think it is improving. It's on the uptick.
And one last question. So I see that another challenge was the suburban image. Are we, do we have any ideas of how to, I guess, evolve away from that? Are we working with public information to kind of reshape our public image?
I think that our public information office has been producing some good articles on the new development going on in the city, and frankly, the city is becoming a story that's telling its own version of how we are no longer just a suburban community with developments like Crown and Rio and what's going on in Old Town. I think all of you have certainly been proponents for walkable, mixed-use, denser infill development, and I think slowly but surely our image is changing. It doesn't happen overnight, but we do believe it's occurring.
Okay.
I did want to quickly address your other outstanding question about the ground floor of
Okay, thank you.
Archstone, or the apartments here in Old Town. Those spaces, the 18,000 square feet of long vacant commercial space on the ground floor, lots of reasons we could spend a work session discussing why that's been. We won't. Temporary space has proven challenging because it's missing everything. There's no bathrooms, there's no heat, there's no air conditioning, there's no lighting, there's nothing in there. It's literally just concrete. So even putting something in there temporarily is very difficult to do. That said, there is an active application pending for a conversion of that space to apartments with potentially some of the parking spaces inside the garage being converted to public use as part of that application. So that will be.
And the committee beat that whole thing up pretty well.
Committee discussed this as well.
The last session that we had.
Okay. Something's better than nothing, so I'll be on the lookout. Thank you.
Okay, is there anything from anyone in the public who'd like to, ask a question, add a comment? Going once, going twice. Okay. We thank you guys very much for the presentation.
Thank you.
Next, we're gonna, Tom gets to stay here, and we're gonna invite Jim McNulty to the table to speak about the Old Town Advisory Committee.
Thank you, Mayor. So happy to be back again, this time for what I get confused about it is technically, I guess, a subcommittee of the Economic Development Committee, but important in its own right, and it's been around a very long time. Jim McNulty took over just this past year as its chairperson, changing of the guard from Lenny Levy, who had the position for a long time, and Jim's been a member now for, we're guessing, about 3 years, and we're very happy that he stepped in to fill this role, so I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you, Tom, and we couldn't do what we do without Tom and Sharon Disk, so we really appreciate all of your guidance and leadership at the committee. It's a pleasure to be here again this year. As Tom said, I was elected to the chair this year. I want to thank Lenny Levy for his years of service on the committee. He's still with us, but I want to thank him for his leadership over the years. We have a very interesting group of committee members from different parts of the city, actually. You know, the Old Town, of course, does not have a single developer, so OTAC kind of serves as the de facto business improvement district, but we don't have one of those. So we have a cross-section of business owners, residents, people like myself who actually live adjacent to Old Town. We even have folks who live well across the city, but believe in the vitality of Old Town as being vital to the city. As you know, Old Town is Gaithersburg's original walkable community before walkability was cool. So we are, as I said, in a committee comprised of all kinds of different business owners, property owners, We are the eyes and ears of Old Town. We do advocate for economic development, for revitalization, but also safety and security and aesthetics. We really are, Old Town is the crossroads of the city, but we also are a crossroads really of all the different committees that the city has in some way intersect with Old Town, because a number of the programs that we do, a number of the programs that the different committees put on end up coming through Old Town. We are charged by the city to establish Old Town as the civic, social, and cultural heart of Gaithersburg. We're promoting and assisting the mayor and the council in coordinating these revitalization efforts in Old Town, and really trying to promote Old Town as a place to do business and a place for people to want to come back and live. There are some perceptions that the city and the committee continue to battle about Old Town, and it is our hope that through the different projects that we've had over the years, and this has been a successful year for Old Town, that folks start to see Old Town for what it really is, and allows that to continue to gain a critical mass and start to attract bigger opportunities for both business and residential opportunities here in Old Town. As I said, it was a big year for Old Town, and with the opening of the Old Town Park Plaza at the corner of Summit and Diamond Avenue. I'm sorry that I wasn't able to be there in person, but Mr. Mayor, thank you for the shout out. I appreciated that. But we've also had a number of other exciting developments, including the final site plan being approved for 315 East Diamond Avenue, which folks who have been around longer most often refer to as the Fishman site. Archstone, Hidden Creek, and other Old Town apartment communities are at 90% lease or higher. It was exciting to hear Senator Kagan talk about the trying to get the additional funding for the new police headquarters at 16th South Summit Avenue. We have additional restaurants. Green Growlers is reopened now. East Diamond Brewing on the ground floor. La Casita Rincon, and some of the more established restaurants there in Old Town. I spend at least every Monday over at Victor Litz's. My son's getting guitar lessons. And outside of what is considered, the core of Old Town, you continue to see the assembly of land parcels at 355 and South Summit. That continues to progress. But we do have challenges. Councilmember Sales brought up the vacant retail space over in the Archstone property. The demographics and traffic counts continue to stay under the levels that some of the more national retailers would like to see before they step in, something like a Starbucks. There is an ongoing perception of crime that does not necessarily is not necessarily reflected in the crime statistics, and it's I think important for us to over-communicate the fact that Old Town is not a dangerous place to be. It is a safe, walkable community. Some of our new parks, I think, are a perfect example of that. Every time I drove past the Park Plaza over the summer and I saw the kids playing in the fountain, it just brought a huge smile to my face, knowing how many years it took to bring that project to fruition. I know Kathy Druscula would be very happy when she comes back to visit to see all the people using that space. And we continue to have a lack of private investment in some of these aging properties. There's certainly, I like to call these our legacy neighborhoods, and it's one of the problems when you have aging units is that it becomes more expensive to keep them up, but they're not necessarily generating the rents that allows them to do what might necessarily be done at a newer location. This past year, the committee was given updates on the plaza and the Fishman projects. We also had a rather robust discussion when we were looking at the future of the enterprise zone in Old Town and the expansion of that. We met with some of the other committees, including the Cultural Advisory Committee on our shared priorities, and as well with the Arts Committee, talking about art in public spaces. Lighter, quicker, cheaper, that was basically us looking at a way to kind of brainstorm on what are ways that we can do visible things in Old Town without a huge hit to the budget that, you know, would just brighten things up. And, you know, even things like, you know, sidewalk chalk artists, just, you know, little visual things that can just kind of like, oh, that's a nice little amenity here in Old Town. We also had a pretty good discussion about the automotive uses in the central business district and proposed the proposed zoning text amendment. And it was a good discussion because a lot of times that type of use is seen as a detriment, but you know, looking at the dearth of those opportunities across the city, it has to be somewhere, and that legacy location seemed to make sense. So instead of trying to, you know, whack-a-mole and try and chase the illegal uses, it seemed to make more sense to have a more, the best way to put a more legit space and making sure that those rules were being enforced. It was very nice to be able to walk over to the Park Plaza once it was completed, sit there, enjoy the space, enjoy some pizza with the committee, and get to use that new space. Officer Dan Lane came by the committee and gave us an update on the crime stats. And we met about some of the continued revitalization and redevelopment opportunities in the area. 2019, we have some opportunities and some challenges. We're looking forward to the groundbreaking at 315 East Diamond for a mixed-use development there. We are always excited about the additional programming and enhancements for Old Town, particularly not just at the concert venue, but being able to have a full year of the Old Town Park Plaza and being able to use that space and program that space once the weather improves. We are looking at how we can market this redesignated opportunity zone space and so basically you've got the two different zones, the enterprise zone and the opportunity zone, and not just in the you know, East Diamond and Summit, but now that zone has been expanded up 355 over towards the Toys R Us and then over into Lake Forest, and the opportunities that will hopefully, you know, those doors will be opened. And we also continue to pursue new residents and office tenants. One of the big challenges, especially from a membership standpoint, is you have, you know, these wonderful businesses and restaurants, and the challenge is they're busy running their businesses. And how do we get the community more involved in this committee? So we've been discussing, you know, how do we look at the committee and make sure that we are keeping OTAC relevant in 2019 and making sure that we are fulfilling the charter imposed on us by the city and finding a way to make the Old Town Advisory Committee useful for not just the residents but the business owners there, and really allow us to continue to be that voice of Old Town, because we don't have those other means by which these folks can get in front of you all without sitting in one of these chairs. And when you're running a business, especially restaurants, you're working at this hour. So we want to continue to find opportunities where we can be an asset for the community. So before we wrap up, happy to answer any questions. Thank you for the opportunity to serve the city. Like Tom said, I think this is the end of my third year, maybe in March, so I think I might actually have to be up for reappointment. I think it was a 3-year term. So thank you for the opportunity to serve.
Thank you, Jim. Thanks for stepping up to chair of the committee. We appreciate it. We appreciate all of your work. Old Town's been a challenge and a very big priority for everybody up here for as long as I've been in office, and for as long as Mike's been in office, and he's been up here longer than any of us.
Before I was in.
And we're pleased to see progress being made. Obviously, we'd like it to be quicker, but it's been some substantial progress in Old Town, and just ask Tom Lonergan, he will tell you. In fact, we have a website dedicated to all the programs sort of in and around Old Town over the years that we're very proud of. So I'm going to start with Councilmember Spiegel, since he is the liaison.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Piggybacking off of what you said, I mean, I think we do hear sort of the old refrain from some folks in the city, why haven't you done anything about Old Town? And the proof is kind of in the pudding, and you know, there's perception and there's data. And if you look at the data, as you said in your presentation, and as we've discussed over the last few years, there really has been a lot of progress in Old Town. That doesn't mean we rest on our laurels. There's still much more to do, but when you think about, you know, it wasn't that long ago that we didn't have anything going on for the 315 East Diamond Fishman site. We're about to break ground on that site. We didn't have the wonderful new Park Plaza with the fountains. We didn't have the renewed Constitution Gardens, which is now an award-winning nature space park. We didn't have the plans in place to redevelop the building on Summit into a new police station. All of these things are in the works or done, with more to come. And again, that doesn't mean we rest on our laurels, but we need to be communicating the story of Old Town. And I think the short video summary that our staff put together a few months ago that's been circulating is worthy of drawing attention to again, because it's such a great tool for summarizing for folks who are asking, well, what has the city done for Old Town after all this time? We can point to that as a quick summary for folks and push it out, and I know that we have, and I think we should continue to do that. Obviously, Old Town, it's organic. It's sort of dynamic and evolving, and so as good things come along, new challenges come along too, and things turn over and change, and particularly in a place with so much history and where people feel with such strong passions about this area of the city, sometimes change can be hard and disruptive. I think having you, Jim, and having Tom raise this question of how do we reevaluate the relevance of the advisory committee at this juncture is sort of an interesting parallel to the fact that as Old Town itself is changing, it makes sense to consider how the committee needs to change to reflect what's going on in Old Town. It's a tough conversation to have because of all those things I mentioned, but I really think it is an important time for us to think about how we bring in new and other voices into the Old Town Advisory Committee discussions while continuing to keep the valued voices that are already there. We're not talking about changing that. But we're talking about bringing some new voices in, because if the focus really needs to be on economic development, then we need to have those business community members from Old Town at the table sharing their ideas with those of us who've been involved in the committee for a long time, so that we can manage that transition and tackle those challenges going forward. So I'm looking forward to more detailed discussions about what the proposals might look like to evolve this committee. But having said that, I want to thank you for your 3 years of service and for your work more recently at the helm of the committee, and thank everybody who's been involved in this committee. One thing I can say about this committee, and I know it's true of all the committees, but this committee in particular, the members of this committee share a strong passion for working towards making Old Town a success. And I think you can take some pride in the successes that have already been notched over the last couple of years, while still working towards more successes in the future. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Neil.
All right, also thanks for the great presentation and the good work. Piggybacking on one of the things that came up in terms of reaching out to the local businesses, and also something that I brought up in the Multicultural Affairs Group meeting, which is building bridges to the community. I had a discussion with the folks at Identity up the street, which is a Latino youth organization. They also do some economic development and helping local businesses. And the feeling there was their local businesses had no idea what services the city offers for businesses. And that's really a large portion of the groups in Old Town are coming out of that community, which is growing stronger in this part of the city. So might be worth some time to think about how to build those bridges and to let I mean, make them aware of things like the toolbox, but also figure out what else they need and make them aware and bring them into the fold so that they're more of a force in helping to move that forward.
We agree a stronger dialogue with the business community is an intent of potential restructuring the committee in some way. So
Yeah,
exactly
I mean, it's
what you
hard
said.
when you have small businesses, they generally have their hands full and are busy, so it may be tougher to recruit them to be members of the committee, so there may be a need for more outreach and knocking on doors and things, but something along those lines I think would be very helpful. The other, I'm going to be a little less serious here, but the perception of crime in this part of the city, I think, comes from the fact that there are often crime reports about crimes in Gaithersburg, and 9 times out of 10, they're not actually in Gaithersburg. So I don't know how we get the newspapers to stop calling things Gaithersburg that aren't in the city limits. Maybe they should be North Durwood or Greater Laytonsville or something like that. I don't know how you make that happen, but if you come up with a great idea, that would be very helpful as well. You know, plane crashes, things like that aren't in Gaithersburg but come out as Gaithersburg don't help our image for Old Town. But anyway, the one last point, and I brought this up several months ago. We had a letter from a police officer who had moved away from the city for 15 years and came back and was astonished at the growth and transformation of Old Town and the vibrancy of it, and said, look, people who are here day to day don't necessarily realize how much it's changed and how much better it's gotten. So it's really come a long way, thanks in no small part to the work of this committee and economic development and many others. So, you know, I think there's obviously room for improvement. And just as a final point, redevelopment is clearly more difficult to do than when you have a big empty green field and you can build something from scratch. But as the city develops the last of its green fields, it's something that we're going to have to tackle more and more. So this committee's work is really on the forefront of what we're going to be dealing with over the next 20, 30, 40 years and going forward. So, you know, it's very important work. Thank you.
And if I can put my marketing hat on for a second, I mean, perception is reality, and one of the things that I think we always talk about is, you know, additional ways to get the message out. And I think the social media team here at the city has been doing a great job of really trying to make what this body does more accessible. And I think it's, you know, additional conversations should be continue to have about how do we capture those users and get that, you know, those email addresses, those social media accounts, how do we get them to subscribe? Because we can continue to put that information out there, but they actually have to, you know, the adage that communication is a two-way street. They have to actually be receiving that information, or we're, you know, just kind of shouting into the wind. So
yeah, I've had that conversation with the PIO group actually in terms of, you know, many years ago I was responsible for magazines at Commodore and Atari, and we had a person whose job was to get those subscription cards into people's hands and filled out. So I'd like to see us do more outreach, however we do it, whether it's at events or through the marketing materials, right? Through getting people to sign up for the newsletters. I've seen people on Nextdoor say, you know, what you guys in Gaithersburg should do is publish a newsletter. It's kind of frustrating since we've been publishing a newsletter for many years. So if they don't know about it, you know, perception is reality, right? If they don't know about it, then it doesn't exist. So anything that your group can think of as ways to get people to sign up for the materials that we already create would be great.
And one of the things that Tom and I have talked about, of course, we need to really kind of put this in front of the committee is, you know, the council has a model where you do your council in the communities, and I think there might be an opportunity to kind of mirror that and you know, get more, you know, in the faces of these businesses, whether it's, you know, rotating the meeting around between, you know, different restaurants and businesses. I mean, I'm happy to go to La Casita for a meeting. I mean, I think you might actually get more attendance that way. But just, you know, opportunities where we can really meet the people where they are, meet the business owners, meet the residents, and not have them come to us. I think it's going to be incumbent upon all of us, the committee, the council, everyone, to really reach out to the people where they are, and especially with some of the cultural differences with a lot of these business owners is, you know, there is a hesitancy to reach out to government. So I think, you know, the opportunity for us to go to them in their space, I think, can do wonders for that outreach.
Neil?
Yeah, I'm done. Thank you. Great point.
All right, Lori Ann.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'll just echo the sentiments of my colleagues. Always excited to see updates from this committee, to see the progress happening in Old Town, slow but steady. And I appreciate the work of Tom and his team. Thank you for the presentation. I have a few questions. So I asked Tom already about some of the businesses. I know you mentioned that there was a traffic study done and numbers were low, and that may be impacting the businesses that want to come here. Are we sure that most of the residents here are using cars to get around, or are they using other means of transportation in this particular part of the community? And are we taking that into consideration?
Well, it's certainly not the we that's taking it into consideration. When Jim is referencing the regional and national retailers, their criteria are very specific to automobile traffic.
Okay.
Everyone is different, but in fact, to your point, this is one of those areas that people don't know a lot about, and with good reason. Why would they? There's a science behind how retailers decide where they're going to locate. Sharon Disk and I are actually putting together a community event where we're recruiting a site selection expert to come and address the community on educating on how decisions are made by retailers and where they're going to go, and criteria. Criteria for each of them is different. It's based on education, it's based on traffic counts, it's based on all sorts of stuff. So I hope we can all benefit by learning a little bit more, but in general, the traffic count criteria here in Old Town are not at levels that they'd like to see, for instance, on 355. You know, they open but so many sites a year, and they certainly want the highest volume of traffic going by their location. And Old Town, our roads just don't accommodate the volume of traffic that many of them are looking for.
And I know Jim mentioned Starbucks, but I hope we're looking outside the box at
Yes.
unique small businesses to come to the heart of the
Well,
city.
and I think if you look at the makeup of the business owners in Old Town, you see
Already.
you know, that's where in Gaithersburg you have the mom and pop restaurants. That's where you have the antique store. The rents are lower. So it's a lower bar of entry for these entrepreneurs. And the challenge is making sure that they have the ability to, you know, reinvest into their own businesses, but still, you know, you look at La Casita, that was a wonderful opportunity to revitalize kind of a pillar of Old Town that used to be Roy's. I only had the opportunity, I think, go there twice before it closed when I moved to Gaithersburg. And now that's become a vibrant, you know, corner of the community. So it's finding those opportunities where, you know, making some of these folks available or aware of like the toolbox and those kinds of things. They may just not know that those resources are available to them. And the more opportunities that these entrepreneurs have to reinvest in their businesses, then I think you're going to start, you know, it's that whole adage of the rising tide lifts all boats. And yeah, I would prefer to see something other than a Starbucks in there, but just using that as the example. You know, you have, you know, Gaithersburg Station, you have Crossing, then you'll have the Fishman. You know, you're adding foot traffic to just that intersection alone. You know, so those kinds of developments are going to help with the traffic count. I know getting stuck at those lights, picking my kids up at St. Martin's, there's certainly a number of vehicles going there with when the trains come through. But you know, just increasing those opportunities where folks are spending time in Old Town. That was one of the great things about the park pavilion, the Old Town Park Pavilion, is that it increases that length of stay that people are spending in Old Town. And the longer they linger there, that increases the odds that they're going to spend money in Old Town. And that starts developing habits, and then all of a sudden people go and spend their Friday nights going to the plaza and going to Growlers or whatever that habit becomes. And it's all about just, you know, sampling and getting people to come out and seeing what opportunities are really here in Old Town.
So we just, thank you, Jim. We just had a meeting a few weeks ago. The Maryland Sustainable Growth Commission had a meeting here, but because of weather, we couldn't do the walking tour component of the meeting. And, you know, with safety concerns and not being able to really build bridges with businesses, it might be something that we can look into when the weather gets better, to have a walking tour of Old Town, and
Sure.
maybe make it an annual thing where we can leave something with the businesses about all the great things that the city offers, and then, you know, maybe have a contingency of staff and you guys and the members and members of the Old Town Advisory Committee, the Economic Development Committee, and the public safety, and maybe have council in the community's walking tour of Old Town and highlight some of the good things that are happening and reassure some residents who have concerns about walking there in the evenings, and that may be a way to quell any fears people have of hanging out here at night. And I think we've already talked about, you know, some sort of proposal or some selling point to really attract businesses, and having something to leave behind at businesses if you do go to businesses, to learn more about ways to communicate with the city would be helpful. So yeah, that was it. One other thing about lighting. I know that there was some concern. Some residents came and made some statements about the need for more lighting in Old Town, and I think Tacoma Park just installed LED lights in their city. So I don't know if we've looked into that for the city and what the cost would be and time frame. If
Probably a part that our city manager can talk about here, just because of the public works aspect, but I know that as part of the Old Town Park Plaza's design study, there is a lighting study that's part of that as well that has actually not been completed. They were waiting to get through the plaza. We're still, even though it's done, it's open, there are still some items that need to be addressed, and they are to do the lighting analysis afterwards. But I also know that PW has...
Right, Mike Johnson, I think he actually met with Tacoma Park, who surprisingly has about more than twice as many lights as we do for such a smaller geographic area. And he's met with Tammy Watkins of Pepco very recently about moving forward with the LED relamping project.
Okay, all right, good. All good things are happening.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Mike.
Well, thank you for the report, and thank you for your length of service on this committee, and I hope continued service after in the future here. And for the others on the committee, I know our friend Henry always used to emphasize that what we needed were more roofs with people who lived under those roofs in the Old Town area, and so I think we've made great progress in that area. I think we do have some perceptions that we need to correct, but I would remind people that some of the longest standing businesses in the city are actually located in Old Town. I remember 6 years ago, the mayor and Kathy and I went to the 10th anniversary of Taco Bar. That was 6 years ago, okay? Since then, I think that company has actually opened a couple of the restaurants in one in Montgomery County and one in Frederick, I believe. And they're related to the Taco Bar that is at Washingtonian as well. So another successful business that kind of started there. So La Casita is a great addition. I think as people find out about these places, then they'll tend to come. And when we have events there, one of the events we talked about tonight was the La Mia de Mayo, which runs down East Diamond. It's a measured mile, and I think hopefully we'll have more people engaged in that, and I think the activities there do something. The book festival, I think, is a draw as well. So, what happens in Old Town is important for a lot of reasons, but the most important reason is I have 2 grandchildren that live in Old Town, and they live there with their mother and father, who have lived there now for 2 years and find it to be a very safe and walkable and very pleasant community. And I know that there are a lot of residents of the area that chafe at comments made about their neighborhood and their community. Sometimes those comments come from people you'd be surprised that would say things like that. So We have seen progress. It seems the pace seems to be picking up, but we still have challenges and challenge spaces. But I think the trend is a good one. I think we were all overjoyed when Growlers changed hands and was able to reopen, and now there's a brewer, East Diamond Brewing on the ground floor, and we have another brewery opening very soon on the other side, Brawling Bear, which is garnering a great reputation in the region for their beers, and so they'll be opening soon on the other side of Old Town as well. So I think, I expect progress. There's lots of room for improvement, but I think we have to remember the stability of the businesses that have been there, the mom and pop shops, the Waters Appliance, Gaithersburg Rental, the pharmacy, Victor Litz. There are plenty of businesses, and they're not all restaurants that are successful and have been there for a long time and been very stable. So, and most of the people who use those restaurants are locals, people who walk to those restaurants or drive a short distance to get there. So some nice choices, and I think we have to explore and understand a little bit how those families and those business owners have made it work. And I think other businesses in the area can learn from that as well. And if we go on 355, again, we'll find some other areas where, things have stabilized, long-standing businesses, and some new establishments as well. So lots of opportunity there, lots of opportunity for growth and great opportunities for improvement. It's a great community to live in. I can tell you that firsthand. So thank you again for your work and for continuing to promote some good ideas and priorities on how we go forward.
Thank you.
Rob.
So thank you for the presentation, Jim, and thank you for your work. And of course,
Rob,
Tom.
can you get closer to the mic?
Sorry. Of course, Tom, all your guidance and efforts here are appreciated as well. I think we've hit on all the great points of Old Town. It's a community that I think it needs more attention, not for bringing things to it, but for getting people to realize how actually great this area is. We talked about the restaurants. We talked about all the great park space. My personal favorite in the area is the amenities such as the museums. Bring my children there every weekend. It's one of the very few train museums in this entire region, and I've noticed over time the programming getting much more robust, and it really attracts people into that central area. Mike had many great points, but the two I'd like to emphasize the most are the two breweries that we've got going on in Old Town. And if we want to do a walking tour, as Lorianne suggests, we could start at Brawling Bear, make our way to East Diamond, and keep on going down all the way to the excellent Tamarind Margaritas at La Casita. Just throwing that out there.
That becomes a pub crawl, I believe.
Call it what you may. But great work all around on keeping Old Town on the trajectory we all want to see happen. And in fact, as Mike had mentioned, accelerating, I think, and we'll keep watching it go.
Thank you. You mentioned just one last thing, Mayor. You mentioned the programming at the Bud Car. I do want to acknowledge Michelle Potter and her team for the Old Town concerts on Thursday evenings, which continue to grow. I saw a count, I don't remember the numbers, but they were very impressive for the attendance this year. Thursday evenings on the lawn have been very busy, and it's helped to keep people downtown during the hot summer months. So thank you for that, and we hope to continue to grow that series.
And also yoga in the park as well.
Yoga in the park.
All right. We don't have much of the public left here, but we'll open it up if anybody has anything that they'd like to add or ask here. Otherwise, going once, going twice. Okay.
So we talked about murals earlier, and I think there's some ideal locations in Old Town for some murals. So for some other public art, murals would be one way.
Absolutely. I mean, we did look at a couple of the locations along East Diamond. There's certainly opportunities along the back wall of the crossings is another one, right? So
and under the bridge.
And under the bridge, right, exactly. Right. So, yes, we wholeheartedly agree.
All right. Well, we thank you guys very much for the presentation, and thank everybody who's still watching at this point. It's been somewhat longer of a work session than I anticipated, but here we are. We have our next regular meeting of the Mayor and Council is next Monday, December 17th. Until then, let's do great things, Gaithersburg. We are adjourned.